Good morning and welcome to the UK Mental Health and Cybersecurity Leadership Summit and the UK Launch of Cybermindz. My name is Tinesh Chhaya and I will be the MC this morning. Founded in 2022, Cybermindz is a purpose-driven, not-for-profit, dedicated to improving mental health in the cyber industry. Over the next 2 hours, you will hear from some amazing speakers, experts in our industry. I do have one ask though, from all of you. Please stay until the end, as you're in for a treat and you'll be able to experience the iRest protocol for relaxation yourself. And finally, a massive heartfelt thank you from all of the Cybermindz team to everyone who has made this journey and summit possible. A massive thank you to the NCSC for supporting Cybermindz. Lindy Cameron, your support validates our mission and is deeply appreciated. Also, this launch would not have been possible without the support of our UK founding partners, Mimecast and Cyjax, and of course, our UK launch partner and sponsor, Netscope. For all of our audience, thank you for joining. And of course, please feel free to ask any questions, put them in the chat, and we can ask the panel later. For now, let me hand over to Lindy Cameron. Have a great summit.
I'm Lindy Cameron, CEO of the National Cybersecurity Centre. We know that cybersecurity professionals come under huge pressure at times, whether that's a big incident or a sustained campaign. And we want to make sure that cybersecurity professionals are able to ask for help and know where they can find it. I'm really delighted that Cybermindz is coming to the UK, bringing the fantastic experience they've had in the US and Australia, and helping us in the cybersecurity profession to think about how it is we can prioritise the mental well-being of our staff and to make sure we're able to keep the UK the safest place to live and work online. It's really important, therefore, that we give all of our staff time to think about their own health and well-being, and I'm delighted that Cybermindz has found a way to help us do that in the cybersecurity profession. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindy. So over to our first guest, the award-winning tech and cybersecurity leader, coach and business advisor, the amazing Jane Frankland, who will talk to us about cybersecurity leadership and innovation. Over to you, Jane.
So welcome everyone. My name is Jane Frankland and I'm absolutely honoured to be here for the UK launch of Cybermindz. And the reason that we're here is because we are facing a significant challenge in the field of cybersecurity, and one that impacts the well-being of individuals, plus the cyber resilience of organisations and our nation. And this challenge is called burnout. And unfortunately, most of you will have either experienced burnout at some point in your career, or you're going to be dealing with it right now. I know I have, and I've encountered it a couple of times. And that's why I've spoken about the dangers of burnout for many years, both in the context of leadership and women. Now, earlier this year, when I was at InfoSec Europe, I was on a panel with cybersecurity leaders Saab Sembi, Peter Oliver, Amanda Finch, and Tom Langford, talking about mental health in cybersecurity and how it has affected us, and a new mental health in cybersecurity charter that is being developed. And I told a story about my last episode of burnout and how it had showed up, not with exhaustion actually, but with extreme cynicism. I was working all hours. I've got a global business. I was working multiple time zones. I'm a single parent. I've got my kids to look after, and it was just crazy. And things had got out of control. And that's when it kind of hit me. But the story that really struck me actually was the one from Tom, because Tom spoke about how he had tried to commit suicide on account of burnout. And what happened was, a few years ago, he was building a cybersecurity team from the ground up. He'd done it, so many times before, and he was doing really well by building partnerships, taking his team out, looking after his clients. And he was working at an organization where it was really tough to get through to the organization about the importance of cybersecurity. They just didn't get it, and there were a lot of politics. And he was traveling a lot, and his travel schedule was brutal, and he became dependent on alcohol. And what happened was he found himself in Italy at one point, literally about to throw himself off a building. And thankfully that didn't happen. There was an intervention and someone talked him off of the building. He writes about it in a blog. But it was this that really struck with me. And thankfully he did get help. But unfortunately, there have been other stories that I've encountered like this from all over the world. And that's why we're here today, to talk about the importance of burnout and how you can recognize it. And over the course of 2 hours, we're going to be hearing from numerous cybersecurity practitioners, leaders, and the team at Cybermindz as we delve into the causes of burnout, the impact it has on us as individuals, business owners, and companies, and what we can do to really change the situation. And because I'm here to really focus on cybersecurity leadership and innovation, I really want to set the scene with some data on what is going on. Now, in 2019, Nominate UK released a report which shocked many of us, and they found that 91% of CISOs were suffering from moderate or high stress, with 17% either medicating or using alcohol to deal with job stress. Then in 2020-2021, a study from the Chartered Institute of Information Security Professionals found that over half of UK cybersecurity professionals were being kept up at night by the stress of the job and work challenges. And then in 2022, the situation worsened with AI Vector reporting on the fact that over half of UK CISOs felt that they were burnt out and had considered resigning due to the immense pressure that they were under. 40% had been forced to seek help due to work-related stress, such as migraines, panic attacks, and high blood pressure. 51% had experienced negative emotions such as depression, anger, or anxiety. And 42% had said that they'd actually called in sick because they couldn't face going into work. And now, of course, we're in 2023, and Cybermindz has just done some fantastic research which tells us that cybersecurity professionals may be burning out at a faster rate than the frontline healthcare workers. Now, when you're in the field, you know the pressures of having to deal with increasing and persistent cyber attacks. You know what alert fatigue feels like and how hard it is to stay on top of rising regulations, standards, and frameworks that you need to abide by. You know you're viewed as the department that likes to say no, so you're having to get people on board, on side, so that you can move projects along. And all the time you are struggling with a lack of skilled personnel to shoulder the load, and a knowledge that you could be laid off next month as the economy worsens and companies try to reset their financials after over-recruiting during the COVID-19 panic. And when it comes to CISOs, cybersecurity leaders, they are literally in the firing line for data breaches. And they're so often excluded from key decisions by upper management, which affect the security of their organization and their work. So it's no wonder why so many are fed up being devalued, are stressed out, sleep deprived, overloaded, and always on. And why they can become a major hazard, unfortunately, for an organization as their memory, focus, and decision-making deteriorates, and their leadership results in poor people management and overall performance. And it's usually at that point where there's an intervention, a heart attack, a breakdown, a diagnosis of cancer, a suicide attempt, and an injury which disables them and takes them out of work, off work for a few months, or a high-profile attack that results in them being sacked, or they decide that they've simply had enough and it's time to leave the company that they're at. I mean, I've got to ask you, who here knows that a CISO's tenure is half that of a CIO's? These scenarios can't go on, and it's really why I am so thrilled that Cybermindz, the Mental Health and Cybersecurity Charter, other companies, are supporting this topic and doing something about it. And the only way it's going to improve if we come together as a collective, collaborate with one another, and really change things in cybersecurity. So, Tinesh, it is over to you now. Thank you so much for listening to me, and have a really good 2 hours enjoying this program.
Thank you very much. And very impactful and very insightful. Thank you. I now have the absolute pleasure to introduce our next speaker, a superstar in his own right, the founder of Cybermindz, Peter Coroneos, who will walk us through the Cybermindz mission and approach. Peter.
Thank you, Tinesh. Hi, everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, bringing Cybermindz into the UK. I wanted to start with a little story that gives a bit of background to all this, when this all began. It actually began when I was 10 years old. I was brought in by my uncle, who was a neuroscientist, to his lab in Perth where he was doing pioneering work in neuromuscular degeneration, and he showed me human brains in buckets. And I remember when he wasn't looking, prodding a couple of brains with my finger and just remarking to myself with that, the brain of a 10-year-old, how it was that this organ of ours, this 1.5 kilogram grey inert mass, could be the repository of our entire human experience. And my interest in neuroscience continued. I went on to study some neuroscience and taught some neuroscience. And it's always been a passion of mine to really understand how the mind works, how the neurology works, how the interaction between the neurology and experience governs our entire interaction with life, with people, and the work that we do. The foundations of Cybermindz really is the bringing together of my two main passions. As a cybersecurity leader in my own right for 25 years, I've sort of privately been doing a lot of self-development work since the 70s around just keeping myself mentally fit and on track. And Cybermindz is really the merging together, the coalescing of those two great streams of my own life, that of the personal development and neuroscience with the criticality of cybersecurity and the roles that we all perform. And so really it's that alignment with those two major streams that embodies everything that we do and we stand for. The mission is really easily stated. It's the alleviation of the suffering of cyber individuals, cyber teams, and through doing that, improving the resilience of organizations and society as a whole. Now, I started doing some teaching in this area around 2018. I was then the International Vice President of the Cybersecurity Advisors Network, Paris-based not-for-profit. And I was noticing even then a lot of signs of burnout in our peers. And so I decided to actually bring a stress management program into cybersecurity. And that really were the early first steps of this great journey that we're on. But in particular, the real turning point came during COVID, when we weren't able to travel as much. I decided to do some more training and actually discovered the IREST protocol, the Integrated Restoration Protocol that had been developed by Dr. Richard Miller in California. And this protocol is really at the heart of what we do now. It's something that has had a long history of application in the military. But I asked Richard Miller, as I was doing my training, and he's become my own personal mentor and indeed is the global chair of our International Advisory Council now. So we're very closely aligned with the pioneer of the protocol himself and his institute. They've trained 7,000 facilitators worldwide and have done a lot of interesting groundbreaking work. As I say, the main use case for me was the military application, returning veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan. In 2006 onwards, they had then had the program officially endorsed by the US Army Surgeon General, and it's now in place in about 73 VA and military care facilities. So we know it works, and my sort of contribution, I suppose, is to bring this protocol through the vehicle of Cybermindz into the cybersecurity profession for the first time in the world. Now, it's not enough to have a great protocol. We also need to be able to measure the work that we're doing. And so the next speaker after me is actually our Director of Organizational and Behavioral Research, Dr. Andrew Reeves. I asked Andrew last year, could we go and start measuring what the baseline looks like within cybersecurity? Initially in Australia. Today we're actually launching, through this launch, the first UK baseline study that parallels the work that we've done in Australia. And eventually we hope to have a lot of international comparative statistics that we can share. Also, the baseline becomes our starting point for measuring our progress as we begin to roll out programs through your organizations and beyond. Andrew will talk about the baseline study and the research results, but also he'll talk about the pilot programs that we've been running in Australia since December of last year. We've now trained over 150 professionals in the protocol, and we've got some very encouraging results coming through, bringing people back from the brink of burnout, reconnecting them very strongly to this sense of mission and purpose that we all carry in cybersecurity. And I think really to Jane's point about cynicism, one of the things that we notice when people burn out is they start to lose connection with those values and principles and why, the big why of why they came into cybersecurity in the first place. And so a big part of the protocol when we deliver it is helping people to re-establish that connection with mission and purpose. And we find that that is part, as well as the neurological changes that occur and the strengthening of brain regions that correspond to emotional regulation and focus and attention. Also, this connection with mission and purpose can be a strong buffer against burnout, because now you realize that this is not just about you, this is about the greater good of a cause that is beyond your own interests. And we find that the combination of the neurology, the mission and purpose, the increase in morale that we see in teams, and also the measurements that we're able to demonstrate to the individuals and organizations is really fundamental to the way that we're rolling this program forward. Finally, to say, as Jane had intimated, the power of community. And I want to acknowledge the work that others have done already in the UK, Saab and Peter and Tom. This concept of the charter, I think, is a very powerful idea. But I guess our contribution today is really just to let you know that we now have actionable processes that we can deliver into cybersecurity teams and beyond, into IT and further afield over time. And that's what we're here for today. I think that's all I had to say. So I want to pass back now to Tinesh to introduce Andrew briefly, and then we're very happy to take some questions. The other thing I think, Tinesh, we want to emphasize is please try and stay on the call. In the final segment that James Reeves will introduce in the last segment today is actually a practical demonstration, so you actually get to taste what the IRIS protocol feels like, at least the 2 or 3 initial stages of the 10-step process, and you'll get a bit of a sense of how this program will work. So thank you again, all of you, for being here today, to our UK founding partners and our launch partners, and I'll hand back to you now, Tinesh.